Don't forget to cheer. Hi! Live from Buttertown, Indiana, it's Soarin on the air. Yay! Yay! So, today we have a little bit different topic that we're going to talk about. And this time I'm going to try not to lick my fingers like I did last week. Okay? So, today we're going to talk about raptor nesting. Okay? Somebody asked about raptor nesting. And so it's getting that season. So first I thought we'd talk about nesting. And then later on, when all the kids are in school, we'll talk about the X-rated stuff of courtship. But right now, we're going to talk about nest. So, far, far away and a long time ago, I took this great picture of a raptor, a velociraptor nest. Okay, so yeah, the picture's not real good. I had to take it from a brownie. But anyways, this is a velociraptor nest. And basically, it's very similar to the nest that you see today of things like alligators and other animals that just clear a place on the ground. And these guys are pretty creative. They clear the area on the ground, and then they put a little rim around, and then they deposit their eggs in there. And of course, then they sat on the eggs, hatched them out, and further changes over the years have been done, where sometimes the eggs are buried and let the ground actually warm them up and incubate them. So, but we still have a lot of birds today that do the same thing, laying eggs on the ground. So here's a harrier nest, okay, and it's basically a prairie or grassland type bird, the harriers, and so they just take an area of grass and they just smush it down, and then make a little bit of a dent in the ground, and so you see this. You also see that in things like the snowy owls, which we talked about a couple weeks ago. Actually, just move the debris around a little bit and then sit on it. And of course, some of the birds that we do have, like our short-eared owls that we have, they also do the same thing, just like the harriers. So the harriers and the short-eared owls are commonly found out in the prairie states. We don't have too many of these around anymore because of our agricultural practices here in the Midwest, but a lot of them have moved up north into Michigan, southern Canada, and those areas. But some of the birds have adapted in other ways. So like our barn owls, okay, our barn owls, like...
Now here's a barn owl.
Just happened to have one here.
Yeah, Julie just happened to have one growing on her fist. So here's a barn owl. This is Monet. And what these guys do is they basically lay eggs on ledges. What do you think, Monet? Oh, you look at that.
Oh. Wow.
A whole bunch of them. Okay. So a whole bunch of these barn owls basically get up on a ledge and or a cavity or something like that. And then they, so she's watching, okay. And they lay their eggs there. So they don't actually have nests,
Didn't know that about you.
And some birds...
No.
Gotta wet my finger again. This is a problem. Some birds, like our Eurasian eagle owls, actually nip on cliffs. There you go. Want to see that? Okay.
Chewy, it's your baby picture.
Yeah, your baby pictures. Just baby pictures. Okay. So these guys actually get up on cliffs. They go into small caves and actually are incubated there. Again, the eggs are just set there right on the ground. So these are the basically simple nests, Now the more adventuresome birds, like our burrowing owls, they'll actually go and find somebody's home, like a gopher home or something like that, and they'll basically take it over. So they'll go down, they'll do some excavating, that kind of thing, and they'll just dig a hole in the ground. So you find these guys out in the prairie states, out to the west of us, out there, Colorado, Kansas, Oklahoma, those states, and also down there in Florida. And so they'll excavate holes and take over a hole that was made by a gopher or something like that, and take it. Kind of a lazy man's approach to the thing. And again, like we talked about once before, that these guys can tolerate high carbon dioxide levels and so they can live down there in those holes. And sometimes they share the holes, but But back to some of the common birds that we have around. Birds that we do see around here, like our peregrines. This is a peregrine that's down there in Tanzania, I think. That's Tasmania. I'm sorry. I knew it started with a TA. So yeah. So Tasmania. So getting a nice bird that's sitting there on the nest. And of course, you go to our falcon cam, all right, and you can see our birds are sitting up on top of the 23rd story of the I&M building, and you can see them up there. They're not quite ready for nesting yet, but we'll get into that in a couple of weeks, okay? So we'll talk about that. And this was kind of an interesting nest. I was there, let's see, when was I there? 1998, okay, at this nest. And so it was kind of interesting because right next to it was a stalagmite, I guess you would call it a stalagmite, but of guano that was about 15 feet tall, okay? So it's been there a long time, Somebody wasn't cleaning up the place, So it was about 15 feet tall just off to the side of this. And for some reason, that picture has disappeared. I don't know what happened to it. Well, I was buying cheap film at the time, and so I lost it. But anyway, so it was kind of an interesting place there in Tasmania where this bird has been there, they figure, for 1,000 years or so.
Wow.
Well, not this bird, but this family of birds have been there for about 1,000 years. But the oldest known raptor nest belongs to these guys. These are gyrfalcons, okay? And so these are the largest falcons in the world. They're almost all white. And so the oldest nest that they have found in the world belonging to a raptor is found there in western Greenland, up along the coast. And these guys are really under a lot of pressure now with the global warming. A lot of the peregrines are moving north and they're disrupting the sites. So now these raptors are heading further north.
Oh, little babies.
I've only seen one here in down in the lower 48. That was over in Ohio a few years ago. Actually, I guess it's been about 12 years. Boy, time flies. So anyways, and it's can't do that. Still trying to wet my finger. I can't get these things.
Gotta get you the sponge.
I know, it's fun. So here's a chimney where the gyrfalcons have nested, and really a beautiful site right there on the coast. So they have lots of protection. Nothing's going to get up there. Am I shaking too much?
I'm trying to zoom in, so it's,
Okay.
Sorry.
So it's kind of neat. So
Yeah, that is amazing.
So how do you judge how old a nest is? If you're going to do this, well, what you do is you radiocarbon date the guano. So right here, you can just see that this is about you can see this about 5 feet tall pile of guano outside the roost there. So this is why we clean up our cages every day, right? We don't come out here for a 4 foot pile of guano.
Is that you, Bob?
No. Well, I'm usually deep in it, but not that time. But anyways, so that was kind of one of those unusual things. But the actual site of the oldest nest, which is estimated to be 2,500 years old, the pile of guano was 5 meters. Okay, 5 meters tall, and that's a lot of guano.
That's a lot.
But that's a lot of birds going over the years, and you got to figure, all the things that these guys have been eating all that time to make such a pile. So those are the birds that have just, like I said, they either use small caves, they use ledges, they do, so they don't do a lot of nest construction. All they do is just find a place that's comfortable for them, and then they use it over year after year after year. And you can see that if you go out to some of the Amish farms where the barn owls have been, you can see where they've been doing it for year after year after year. But, Georgie, come on over. So some of the birds have adapted nicely, and what they do is they use cavities. And so we're all familiar with the little kestrels and the screech owls. They all use those nice cavities. I gotta get a sponge or paper. It's not as slippery. So these guys, if they can find a nice hole in a tree, they'll find that, they'll use that hole in the tree, and they don't do any excavating really, except maybe get the squirrel or the bugs out of there. But they don't add any nest material. So if you see a hole in the tree and you suspect a bird's in there, and you see sticks and stuff sticking out, that usually means it's something like a starling or a house sparrow or even a red squirrel. But these guys, being as smart as they are, they've adapted quite well. So we can put up boxes for them, and you can put up a bird box and get these guys to come and visit you at your farm or your property. And they're real easy to build. I think we're planning in March to have a building session, where kids and their significant others, I don't know what they are now, can come and they can build boxes.
Guardian.
Well, guardians.
Yeah.
Yes, guardians, protectors of the. No.
Maybe that will help.
That'll help you. Okay. I've been saved. Okay, so. However, birds being as adaptive as they are, here's a sparrowhawk, or a sparrowhawk. That's the old name. That shows you how old I am. God, sparrowhawk. Yeah. So okay. So anyways, kestrel here, and he's found a nice little hole in the. I guess it's the rain gutter. Am I turning wrong?
I don't know. Is that upside down?
No, I think it's right side up. Oh yeah, it's upside down.
Okay. You never know with these birds.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
So they found a hole in a building and has built a nest in there. And this is not uncommon. We have some birds that nest down there at the GE building, and they have found some places where the bricks have fallen out, so they build in there. We had some over here at St. Lever's Apartments, where there were some holes in the fascia around the rain gutters, and that was kind of an interesting rescue because that had to be done off a cherry picker. And that was kind of fun. But anyways, they were in there, and so the birds are pretty adaptive. So here they are. Kestrel has found a nice little hole, and so a lot of times on farms you'll also find that if there's a hole under the eaves of a barn or something like that, that the kestrels will move in. How about if I turn it this way? Does that work better?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see if that works. There we go. No more spinning. Okay, so, and of course, we're all familiar with screech owls using cavities. In fact, we just had a release where they went to the backyard of the house, and there's a little, some trees and things there. And they released the bird, and the bird immediately flew up to a branch and then immediately flew to the hole and disappeared like that. So nobody got much time to even look at the bird. I saw the video, and the video was whoop, and it was gone. And like the tree sucked it right in. So a lot of them do the tree nesting thing, and so they find a hole in the tree. There. New habit. And of course, our barred owls that we have, Indy and Peabody, they're cavity nesters too. They just require a little larger hole, And again, just like the screech owls and the kestrels, they will adapt to using things like boxes. So here's a nice box and a nice family of barred owls. And so they're very adaptive. They build up. They don't have to put anything in the nest. All they do is just have a nice big box that is large enough inside to accommodate laying their bodies, laying the eggs, and taking care of the kids. And you see now that kids are big enough, they have to fledge out. And this would be normal behavior for them to fledge out, because one of the things is as the kids get bigger and they get fed more, there's more poo inside. And after a while, it gets a little stinky in there. So it's time to move them out, branch them, okay? So they get them outside, put them on a branch, and then they can feed them out there. So here they are, sitting outside waiting for mom or dad to come back. Now some birds, no, here it is. New habit. Some birds use all kinds of different techniques. So here is a vulture nest, okay? This is behind a trunk of a tree, or a fallen tree, and just lays the egg on the ground and then incubates it down there. So pretty adaptive, but not very creative. So vultures, just lay their egg on the ground, or sometimes vultures I'm going to learn how to do this better. Sometimes vultures find small caves to go into. In fact, sometimes they'll even go into houses. If there's an abandoned house or something like that, they'll go in there. So they'll do that. And then probably something a little more natural is tree cavities. So I haven't seen that yet, but on my barn, there's a big ventilation hole up under the gable, and every year the vultures come up and they check that hole out to see if they want to go in there and have a nest. Unfortunately, there's not much on the other side, so it's not very acceptable to them. So they sometimes will go in there. Am I still shaking too much?
Well, when I zoom in, it gets a little
Fuzzy?
shaky. There we go.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So,
Yeah,
so anyway,
that's
so the vultures are pretty adaptive. I was surprised, that they do have a variety of different things. And just in case, just when you thought you figured it all out, they find a nest in a tree. So they found themselves an abandoned nest, and they set themselves up in the abandoned nest. So they use all kinds of different techniques for finding a nest. They're pretty creative. So they're a little smarter than you thought. Oh, where's our vulture lady today? She's out hiding somewhere.
She's
She's cleaning, making
yeah.
sure that guano doesn't get up to the 2,000 year level. Okay. So anyway, so it's really interesting to see that some of these birds just don't fit the norm. They just do what it is that's necessary for them. But then we get into the nest building stage. As birds evolved, they start climbing up trees and things like that, and so they need something to hold their eggs. Now there are a few species of eggs or of birds that don't make nests. They just lay their egg on a branch. So white tern, or sometimes called fairy tern, actually lay their eggs right on a branch. Potus, which are kind of related to our nighthawks, they just lay an egg on the branch, and then the bird incubates it right there. So it's kind of neat that sometimes you still don't need any sticks or anything. You just need a branch that's cut. So
How does it stay on there?
I don't know how they stay on there, but
Are they flat on one side?
they must be. They must be flat on one side. It gives them strange looking kids, but then I don't know how they roll them. Because it's part of the incubation thing. You got to turn the eggs, all the time. So I don't know how they do it, but Mother Nature is just great. So there's all kinds of things. So you might look up white tern or fairy tern and or potu and see them. And like I said, they lay their eggs right on the nest or on the branch. And there's probably some others that do the same thing. In fact, sometimes I think like mourning doves, they have such a sketchy nest. It looks like there's nothing holding those eggs in, but somehow they still do it. So anyways, so now we have birds like our red-tailed hawks and Cooper's hawks and others that actually take small branches up and they start putting them in a fork in a tree or a place there on the tree where it'll hold. And then they just stack enough branches in there to hold. A lot of times the courtship thing is very interesting, watching Dad bring in the branches. And I'm sorry, I can't use the word dad anymore, can I? The male brings in the branches, okay? I'm sorry, it's all changing. So anyways, so the male brings in the branches, the female takes them, she arranges the living room the way she likes it, and then puts the branch in place. Sometimes she rejects a branch if it doesn't fit. What are you going to do? So off it goes, gets tossed to the ground. So then we end up with a number of really nice nests. So here's some examples of red-tailed hawk nests. And, quite often, red-tailed hawks, I call them the Labradors of red tails, and of hawks, because, they accept people very readily. So quite often they'll put a nest quite close to civilization. Sometimes they get in a little bit of trouble because they put them on people's balconies or on top of their air conditioning units, things like that, where they're protected and safe, And so, again, you can't do that. Wow. And of course, then there's great horned owls, which really don't make nests. What they do is they steal other people's nests. So they come along, and so if they find a nice red-tailed hawk nest or a raven's nest or a crow's nest or something like that, they'll just kind of move in, just kind of, In fact, down there at Eagle Marsh, we had a pair of bald eagles. build a nest. It was their first one, or maybe it was their second one. But anyways, they built the nest, and as the last day, Mom had gotten the last stick in place, and along came a pair of great horned owls and drove them off. And so now these guys are over there in over there by Roanoke, and so anyway, so a lot of times there are some lazy critters out there that just use their strength and everything to drive off others. And this I just had to put in nice little cute bunch of Cooper's hawks. You know, aren't they cute? Yeah. Yeah, they are. They're, you know. And then of course we go on to the bigger birds. We have things like the bald eagle, and they bring in a lot of big sticks. You know, and they can make a nest about 3 meters wide, about 1.5 meters thick, deep. You know, and there's one up there by where Lana and Louie live. Okay, too many L's in that. Okay, so, and that thing has fallen out of the tree a couple times, but they keep going back to the same tree because it sits there right by a marsh where they can watch, where they go fishing and stuff like that. So it's great, you know. So it's not far from the grocery store. You know, yeah. Everything they need right there, but they just can't get suitable habitat. So we have things like bald eagles, and they make some huge nests, you know. And you know, so there's several around here. There's one over there in the cemetery there, the Catholic cemetery off Lake Avenue. There's one down there at Fox Island. There's one over at Arrowhead Marsh. There's several of them around that you can see. There's one up there by Mongo. So they're there. So they, you know, huge. Oh, and there's one off Clay Street there in Grable or Leo. No, Cedarville.
Don't disturb them.
Don't disturb them. No.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Please don't, because we had them building a nest there at the what is it, the Sportsplex or whatever it is there by the IU campus, and everybody's dog had to come and visit that nest.
Yeah.
And basically the eagles just gave it up. You know, the eagles are pretty tolerant usually, but this was just, you know, their first try at it, so they just gave it up. But you know, so. But one of the interesting things, so you got this, you got also the golden eagles. This year there were no nesting golden eagles in the Midwest. Okay, this year.
Wow.
So but you know, but that basically that's kind of to be accepted. But a little bit further to the north in Canada and a little bit more to the west along the Rockies, yeah, there's nesting. You know. But one of the things I thought was really kind of interesting was this golden eagle nest. I don't know, you can see it up there. This is in Montana, and you see the nest here, and it's 7 meters tall. The nesting.
Wow.
So the birds have been nesting there since about 1400. They took radiocarbon dating, and they took some branches from the there since 1440 something. You know, so a little bit before we came to the country. So anyways, eagles, they make cute parents.
Yeah.
And then of course there's osprey. Ospreys like to make those big nests. They're bringing in all kinds of stuff. Usually it's mostly branches and things like that. Flotsam and jetsam, whichever one's which. But anyways, so you get flotsams. And the curious thing is that in the United States, essentially up to about 1870, the ospreys always nested in trees. But after 1870, and you know, with the introduction of telegraph poles and other things, all of a sudden the ospreys adopted man-made objects. So very rarely will you find an osprey nest in a tree. You know, occasionally you'll find them, but for the most part they don't exist in trees anymore. They actually go out, and so they either find a rock pile that they can, you know, that's up above the beach or something like that, or they'll go at any kind of a man-made structure we'll use. So that was kind of an interesting thing about those guys. And yes, they do occasionally. They'll find a broken off tree, and then they'll stack it. You know, it's much like a man-made thing. I thought the interesting thing was a couple of years ago, the Chesapeake Bay Authority was having trouble with an osprey because they kept building nests right in front of the camera that was monitoring traffic. And the camera was way up there. I mean, it's like 200 feet up.
Wow.
You know, I felt sorry for the guy that had to go up there and kind of clean it off. But the bird just said it liked that spot, you know. So, but eventually Chesapeake Bay Authority did win. They finally convinced the osprey that couldn't hit there.
He'd go someplace
Yeah,
else.
go someplace else. But anyways, to wrap this up, because I got to go to school this afternoon. But anyways, some unusual nesting spots. I thought that this was a few places. So here's a nest of an upland buzzard, which is sort of similar to our red-tailed hawk. And this is in Mongolia. And this is a tractor tire. And so basically the buzzard came along, put sticks and stuff in there, and had a nice little nesting spot there. So it's kind of unique because, well, in Mongolia, it's hard to find trees. There are some trees up. There is some alpine forest way up in the northeast corner of, but for the most part, out there in the desert or the flatlands, there aren't too many trees. So that was kind of unique. And here was if you get a little close up, that's a kestrel nest in a stump.
Oh yeah, there it is.
About 5 feet off not even, 2 feet off the ground? Yeah, so that was kind of a little unusual.
Yeah.
And this reminds me of a story. Somebody had, must have been about 10 years ago, had bought some owl boxes, okay, for he and his family to put up, and he put them on his back porch, okay, and, so here they are sitting on the floor, just sitting there, and they go out Saturday morning with the kids, and they're going to put the owl boxes up, and so one girl goes over and she says, "Dad, there's an owl in this box."
Wow.
So here sitting right on the ground, the owl had just moved straight in, So that was, I don't know, wild birds should charge some extra for that. I don't know. So, and then this is an interesting story. Again, this is Mongolia. And this is a water cistern, and a Saker falcon had built a nest in there and was raising babies. This was his second year. The first year didn't work out too well because nobody could get up and out. What the adults would do is they fly against the wall, bounce off, and get enough energy to get up out of there.
Wow.
So the people who came along cut a hole in the wall of the cistern so that the chicks could get out. But anyway, so it's interesting to see these. When we were in Kazakhstan, which wasn't too far from here, we found them in a cemetery, and they had built nests into the wall, and the cemetery. So can't do that. Okay. And then this nest here, this is a let's see, what is that? Oh, that's again an upland buzzard, and this buzzard had used animal bones, for its nest. And this is not uncommon up in Alaska, where golden eagles and bald eagles actually use antlers and bones and stuff like that to build their nest with. And it must be kind of neat because then the antlers and everything lock together and things don't move. And I got one more story. Oh, I got a lot of stories, but this is okay. And again, back to Mongolia. I don't know, this guy liked Mongolia. So anyways, interesting story. Because Mongolia basically have no trees, to shade the chicks or anything. So a lot of times what the upland buzzards will do is they'll build their nest right next to a telephone pole. And then when the chicks are old enough to start moving about, they actually follow the shadow around the pole as the sun moves during the day.
Oh.
Yeah, so they
Stay cool.
That's pretty cool. I mean, they're pretty adaptive, So it's a lot of interesting things about nests out there. Sometimes you find birds cohabiting. So I think I was in where was I? Brazil, possibly. Okay, Jabiru up top, Quaker parrots underneath. All living in the same thing. You'll find there's places in Africa where you'll find co-sharing, if you will. And basically what happens is the one bird is providing protection for the other. I don't know what the second bird's doing for the first. I don't know what the Quakers do for the Jabiroos. But the Jabiroos are big birds, so they just keep everybody else away.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things like that. So next week I'm going to bring in some information about other bird nests, okay? And so I found a little article about different kinds of nesting around the world that, we talk about these little stick nests and stuff, but there's some really interesting stuff out there about birds and how they live. So anyways, I've run out of time, and that's just great. So don't forget, know,
I can't see what time it is.
go to Kroger's, you know, stock up on stuff, you know, and then, you know, and, again, get your community rewards card out there and send a little bit of money to us. We really appreciate it. You know, our birds really like it. You know, every month or every quarter, we give in enough money for 2 boxes of frozen mice, which the birds appreciate.
Yay.
Yay. Amazon smiled. Okay, I know that Amazon is rich enough, but still, you know, they do share a little money with us. So, you know, so take care of that.
Yay.
And then, don't forget, okay, the Raptor adventure. You can go on our website and you can make arrangements with us, and you come out, bring your family out. Yeah. What? There you go. There you go. Oh, look at that. Well, that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah,
Okay.
who is that, Monet?
That's amazing. That, you know, a lot of times animals can't tell anything if it's two-dimensional.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's really interested in these barn owls. I thought it was interesting on the cliffs. So anyways,
No.
Raptor Adventure, you come out, you know, spend an hour or so with us, you know, meet the birds, meet the folks out here that work to take care of these birds, and try to keep our environment going. So that's it for today. I'm going to say goodbye until next week. And if you have topics that you want to discuss, you know, just send it in. You know, we'll, you know, no questions today.
No.
Gee whiz, must do another great job.
Chewy.
Goodbye, Chewy. Goodbye, Monet.
No.
Say goodnight, Gracie. Okay.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.
Thank you. We'll see you next week.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye again.
Bye-bye.